Good afternoon and welcome back to Simply Race here in Milton Keynes for the second round of the Simply Race British Championships. This time it is touring cars. Alex Goldschmidt here on site at Simply Race in Milton Keynes, and once again joining me from the north, Steve Proudley. Hi Steve, good afternoon, welcome back buddy.
Good afternoon Alex, and now the excitement really builds for the touring cars.
Yes, indeed. So coming into this round, we again will be at the virtual setting of Donington Park National at Castle Donington at the 1.957 mile circuit. Coming into this round, Callum Cripps is the standing as leader on 50 points ahead of Luke Bennett, with Matt Richards rounding out the top three, all covered by 10 points. But there has been a bit of a change. Lewis Manley, who was running the Vauxhall Astra on the opening round of the season, has opted to switch to the Honda Civic, thereby meaning that he loses all of his championship points from the first round and goes on to zero ballast, with Callum Cripps having the maximum of 60 kilos, as it seems like qualifying is getting underway here at the circuit. Virtually speaking, 45 miles for each race, a total of 135 miles of racing action here at Donington Park. So looks like we've got Daniel Handover in the number 43 Subaru. You can see the laps. Lap times will be shown on the left-hand side of your screen. Air temperature 13 degrees Celsius, track temperature the same, and we've got just over 13 and a quarter minutes left to go. And one of the standout performances was by Luke Bennett in the MG that you now see on your screen, the very stealth MG6 GT there. And also, one of the great things about this side of things, Steve, we've got an additional 2 laps, 23 laps per race for the touring cars. But again, ballast on the second round of the season will now play into the championship dynamic before we head to Croft on the 18th of October, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The ballast is going to probably play a big part of this race, and also I would imagine the tyre wear is going to come into this into the touring cars a lot more than it did with the Clio racing. And obviously, I believe they've got a choice of compounds as well.
Yep. So some opting to go onto the mediums, which was the case with Luke Bennett in the 101 MG. A lot of the field are running on softs, which includes the number 2, last year's runner-up, Lewis Manley, having switched from the Vauxhall to the good old Honda Civic Type R. And he's now making his way through into Coppice. Had a real good chat with Lewis. And by the form book, through a 30-minute practice session over the course of 11 laps, Lewis Manley was the quickest of anybody by nearly exactly 0.4 of a second ahead of Matt Richards, both in Honda Civics, both running on the soft compound tyres. But interestingly enough, Ben Willis in the 85 Honda Civic was running on mediums and wasn't that far off the pace. He was running on a 1:07.867. As you can see, the tyre selections for the drivers, all apart from Matt Willett, running on the soft compound tyres, as Lewis Manley now makes his way through into Hollywood and then down into the Craners. And the speeds are further increased as opposed to what we saw in the Clio Cups, Steve, this morning, as again, the Scandinavian flick seems to be well and truly personified in the Honda Civic of Lewis Manley going through the old hairpin.
Yeah, absolutely. Maximum attack, full commitment there in the Honda. Awesome cars when they're on full chat, as it were. Really putting it through its paces and looking to get a good lap time in there. But yeah, I mean, obviously with the Clio's, obviously a one-make series, you've got all the different characteristics here in the touring cars with all the different manufacturers involved, and front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive coming into it as well. So yeah, it should be very interesting to see some of the cars having strong points, parts of the track, and some cars having weak parts. You know, it all comes into play.
Yeah, 2 wheels up into the air goes the Honda Civic of Lewis Manley, as he will set the initial benchmark of I've just seen a 1:07.753. That is just under half a second off of his best free practice time, and he was purple in every single sector. A 26.271 in sector 2, a 26.3 in sector 2, and a 15.1. That was over a 1/10.5 of a second over what Ben Willis had done. As the times are rapidly changing, Christian Kelly now goes second in the number 14 with the 1:08.2, followed by Ben Brown and Chris Wilson back for double duty. As there we have the number 14 of Christian Kelly in the brightest Ford Focus I think I've ever seen since the old Team Shredded Wheat days of Motorbase.
Yeah, certainly a standout paint job is that one. It's we're not going to miss that, I don't think.
No, and I think if you put Google Maps onto R Factor 2 roundabout now, you'll see Christian Kelly's car circulating around Donington Park. How's about that? And you can also see the time differentials. There's Ben Willis in the 85, Honda Civic going full chat through the old hairpin, and he is currently on his first hot lap, I think. Just at the moment. Well, he looks to be on an out lap, it seems, because I think he was just pushing the limits of adhesion there through the old hairpin, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, they're just they're finding the way as well. You know, it's finding the levels of grip. They've had a practice session, but as we saw, a lot of them have done the practice session on medium tyres, probably in preparation for the race. But now it's qualifying; they're on softs, so they're just pushing that bit harder and testing the limits of adhesion just that little bit more.
So the top 5 covered by just over 0.67 of a second, around the 1.957 mile circuit here at Donington Park National. As now coming into sight, we have one of the well, that's a Positively Racing Astra. That's another bright livery, and that I think might be in the hands of Ed Sibbald.
Has to be said, with approximately 8 minutes, or just over 8 minutes left to go, Lewis Manley is still pretty much in a class of his own, just under half a second ahead of the closest rival. So he's really setting the pace.
So at the moment, Matt Richards, last year's champion, and Ben Willis yet to set a lap time to put them on the board, as Steve Burton, I think, has just decided to pit. He's currently in 12th place on a 1 minute 9.649. Richards has gone nearly a 26.6 in Sector 1. Ben Willis a 26.9 in Sector 1 as well. Richards now goes to within 25 thousandths off of Lewis Manley's best Sector 2 effort. Ben Willis a further 2.5 tenths off of the number 1 seed. So they're fast approaching the conclusion of their best lap so far, as Matt Richards goes in and puts in a 1 minute 8.080. That's 0.372 7 seconds off of Lewis Manley is now. Ed Sibbald looks to have now gone into the pits as well.
I mean, I'm guessing, Alex, you know these drivers just a little bit better than me. Are there any last lap specialists for qualifying? Is there somebody that's going to jump out of the woodwork, as it were, with a couple of minutes to go and just put that definitive hot lap in and get pole position?
Well, watch out for Luke Bennett. He's actually set his personal best of a 26.4 in Sector 1. Now, Matt Richards has actually gone purple in Sectors 2 and 3. So it's the first sector where he's losing around about 3.5 tenths of a second to the deficit of Lewis Manley. As now Ed Sibbald rejoins, and he will be out on the soft tyres. So all drivers out on soft, fresh rubber for qualification. And with 6 minutes and 20 still to go, it can still be quite a bit different. But Lewis Manley again goes quicker than anybody. And he puts in a 1 minute 7.597. So still, he is. I think he's trying to eke out that gap, and he's eked out that gap to nearly half a second over Matt Richards. But we do know one thing, Steve. Times of his show, points are to go. And Lewis Manley has three wheels going. Three wheels in the air for Ed Sibbald in 8th place at the moment as he makes his way through Coppice. You know,
I mean, just looking at the time story there, Alex, Lewis Manley obviously did that 107.257 in practice, so he's got another sort of 3 tenths potentially to come off that time if he can match that practice time.
Well, he was saying around about a 1 minute 7.6 could be pole position. Was that a sort of a sharp warning shot across the bows for the rest of the competition? Looks to be the case, but it depends on how quickly Matt Richards gets up to speed. I mean, he's just done a 28.3 on his out lap. So I think in his Honda Civic, he will be looking to push forward. I mean, Christian Kelly's been quite consistent. I mean, he's only 6 tenths off of Manley at the moment, as a little bit of tyre squeal and full commitment from Ed Sibbald going through into the old hairpin and then through into Starkey's, up towards Schrunt's curve, now into the right at McLean's. Nice and tightly done there by the Vauxhall Astra. Runs a little bit wide, 2 wheels still within track limits as he goes up for the run through to Coppice. So yeah, I think it really does depend on who does what, as Ben Brown now goes third quickest on a 1 minute 8.114, just over half a second off of Manley. So, and look at it from this perspective. It's a Honda Civic 123, followed by a Ford Focus, followed by an MG, and now the number 001, even though it says 77 on the number allocation on the Positively Racing Vauxhall Astra of Ed Sibbald. So, and to be 7 tenths off the pace in a Vauxhall Astra, that's pretty good considering how quick Manley has been in practice and also through the main throes of qualifying, as we just have over 3 minutes and 50 of the session left to go.
Yeah, it's setting an impressive time. It's like you say though, it's setting the pole time. It's important. Get your nose in front on the grid. But Redgate obviously is going to be imperative. Get a good start, get it off the line, and get around that first corner to give yourself the clear air to go. I mean, it's up to the other guys if they can sort of keep on him, maybe keep him under pressure and tag with him. It's could turn into a fantastic race, because when you look down at the rest of the times the guys are setting, they're all very, very close. There's not a lot between them.
No, especially the top 9, where they're covered by 0.773 seconds, rounded out by the 68 of Chris Wilson, who's on your screens at home at the moment. But Callum Cripps has now jumped up into 6th place on a 1 minute 8.292. And it seems like the front-wheel drives are coping a little bit better here at Donington Park National, as opposed to the rear-wheel drive machinery. You know, you look at, say, the likes of Ben Bennyworth, who's running in the iconic BMW M Motorsport colours of white, blue and red. And speaking of the devil, and he doth appear, there is Ben Bennyworth in the M125IM Sport that has helped West Surrey Racing over to a multitude of British Touring Car Championship titles, but now they're running with the current generation 330IM Sport with the BTCC, currently competing at Silverstone this weekend. But Matt Richards has closed the gap. Christian Kelly's gone purple in Sector 1. Matt Richards has just put in a 1 minute 7.982. So the gap now down to 0.385 of a second. Again, he was did a personal best in sectors, as Manley's dropped the hammer yet again. Look at that, a 1.7435 as Steve Burton in the Mercedes, the number 87, pulls into the pits. There is Ben Brown. He's now on track at the moment. Matt Richards and Christian Kelly now exiting the pits. We've got just under 2 minutes remaining of the session. So Manley has put in a 1 minute 7.435. Matt Richards a 1 minute 7.982. Ben Brown a 1 minute 8.114. As we see the one of the other BMWs out there, that looks to be Sean King, I believe. He's got the number 19 on the timing screens, but he's got the number 23 on that very stealth-looking BMW 125IM Sport.
Yeah, it's now's the time. Anyone who's on a lap, they're going to have to really get the hammer down. And as we've got 1 minute 12 left they're on it. This is the last chance.
Yeah, especially with the brake discs glowing red hot, going through red gates, as we just saw from Sean King there, as he now makes his way through the Craner curves, and he's just put in a 26.7 onto the first sector, about half a tenth off of his best lap time, best first sector so far. So let's see if he does improve. He doesn't improve in sector 2 there, it looks like. He's done a 26.677, which was fractionally, that's about nearly 2 tenths off of his best effort in this session. 30 on the clock remaining. Lewis Manley, I think, has said, well, 3 laps, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, he's got that half-second advantage at the moment, so he's sitting pretty comfortably there with literally 19 seconds on the clock. So I think unless someone's going to pull it out of the bag, he's got the job done.
Yeah, I think Luke Bennett's going to try and see if he can factor in towards the front row, because he's just put in a 26.356 on his first sector, and see if he improves on a 26.402 for sector 2 very, very shortly. Ben Brown will cross the line. Well, he crossed the line just as the timer ran out. Matt Woolett will start down in 13th position. Here's Callum Cripps in the number 21 Subaru Levorg GT. Ran for 3 seasons with the likes of Ash Sutton, which took him to the 2017 British Touring Car Championship crown. Jason Plato was also in that squad, amongst others. So Cripps will not proceed any further than 7th. Ben Brown in 5th. But Daniel Handover, great job by him. A 1 minute 7.836 in the number 43 Subaru Levorg as he trundles his way slowly through Redgate. Looks like Matt Richards has opted to end his session, as has Luke Bennett. So they'll round out the top 4. Ben Brown in 2 wheels skyward there from Christian Kelly as he goes through Roberts, and he's decided to call time on his session. Ben Willis will start from 11th. Sean King in the number 19 will round out the top 10, and very, very closely packed between the top 10 there, Steve, just under 1.1 seconds. But what a lap from Daniel Handover on his last flyer, within 4/10 of Lewis Manley.
Yeah, he did enough just to get that second spot, didn't he? Probably sort of a 10th and a half ahead of 3rd place. So he's done what he needs to do. He's in 2nd place behind Lewis Manley on the front row there. So he'll have a clear track to Redgate, and the pressure's on Daniel's shoulders to get in front of Lewis to stop him sort of pulling away. Because if Lewis shows the same pace in the race, then I think he may be able to pull a gap on the boys.
Very true. 23 laps will comprise of each of the 3 races here at Donington Park National. A total of just over 45 miles per race. A total of 135 miles of racing action here at Donington Park National. But we're going to have a brief break before we get the first of our 3 23-lap races underway here at Donington Park. Scored now, mate. So we're back for our first of 3 23-lap races. Steve, very interesting in qualifying how much of a differential the switch from the Vauxhall Astra for Lewis Manley has been after round one, as we're about to get things underway. But Steve, just your first thoughts before we run through the grid about what we could expect to see in this first of 3 23-lap races here at Donington National.
I think very much it's going to depend on the start, because if Manley gets away from the start, then he's going to be very hard to stay with, just judging from his practice pace and his qualifying pace. The rest of the field was so tightly knit together on times that I think there's going to be some very good battling there. But if anybody else has got their eyes on the prize with wanting to win the race, they're certainly going to have to stop Manley from checking out at the front.
Well, the grid is going to be as follows. Lewis Manley will start on pole position in the number 2 Vauxhall Astra, followed by the number 43 Subaru of Daniel Handover. Then it is Matt Richards, the current reigning and defending champion, in 3rd position on the inside of row 2. Alongside him will be the 101 of Luke Bennett. Then it's Brown and Ed Sibbald, Christian Kelly and Callum Cripps rounding out row 4, with Chris Wilson and Sean King completing the top 10. And we have 14 competitors in this round, not quite a full capacity grid, but neither of. We've got Ben Willis, Ben Bennyworth, Matt Willett and Steve Burton. A variety of touring car eye candy for everyone to see as everyone is getting themselves warmed up, ready to go racing. They're all going to be on the medium compound tyres for this race. 23 laps in total, Steve, and it's all about the run to Redgate, as you so well mentioned earlier.
Yeah, definitely. It's about, like you say, that bite point, revs right, and just getting the launch control, just getting it right off the line, and being first into Redgate and down Craner Curves. I'm wondering how wide they can get down Craner Curves. Will it be 2 or 3 wide?
Well, we do know that in previous years, when it comes to touring cars, 3 wide into the first part of Craners definitely can go, but going into the old hairpin, that's a completely different matter altogether.
Well,
The
track's always wider on the first lap. That's a known fact.
Yes, exactly. But we wait for Steve Burton in the Mercedes to line up at the back end of the grid. So hold on to your hats for 23 laps of the Donington Park National Circuit here for the second round, the opening race. Revs rise, lights are out, and they go screaming their way down towards Redgate for the first time. Good start, albeit being with a bit of wheel spin for Lewis Manley, who heads into Redgate leading the way, but Daniel Handover looking to go towards the outside, and up the inside of him comes Matt Richards as they go through Hollywood, down and towards the Craners. Handover just ahead. Ben Brown gets ahead of Luke Bennett for 4th position in the early foray, as it's nearly 3 abreast, as you said, Steve, going through the first part of Craners. But on the first lap, that is basically put up or shut up, really, as now the field hurtles their way through Starkeys, up into Schwantz Curve, then into the right at McLean's for the first time. But Lewis Manley has already got a gap of nearly a second over Daniel Handover, who is being paced down by Matt Richards in the number 1 Honda Civic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Manley's, like you say, second already, just over halfway around the first lap. So I think he's setting his stall out. He's going. Let's hope he's not pushing those tyres too hard.
Oh, well, it looks like we've had a bit of a drama here, and that is for Sean King. Oh, no, the BMW left rear wheel on the grass coming out of Redgate and gets punted by Steve Burton, who was had nowhere to go on that one. I think it was just a bit of a driver mistake there, but Manley, after lap 1, has already got a 1.2 second advantage as it closes a little bit going into Redgate. Handover still keeping ahead of Matt Richards, but for how much longer is the biggest question here. They head through Hollywood on lap number 2 of 23. Down into the Craner Curves they go. And, you know, at the end of the day here, Steve, is all there. Now, there was a bit of a lock-up there from Manley going through the old hairpin, but he's kept that thing planted all the way through up towards Starkeys Bridge and through into Schwantz Curve. We look a little bit further back. Christian Kelly in 7th ahead of Chris Wilson, who's got past Callum Cripps, who's now down in 9th place, who won the reverse bottom 6 of the top 12 race and took the points lead coming into this round, but he's got the maximum amount of ballast, so that Subaru Levorg will be struggling, and just behind him by about nearly 0.3 of a second is Ben Willis.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing we've got to bear in mind. Obviously, Manley's the man to beat today based on the timing sheets, but he has no ballast at the moment. So he's setting his stall out early, and he's gunning it. He's trying to get a gap between himself and the rest of the guys, and hunting that win down.
Luke Bennett has gone purple in sector number 1 with the 26.485, 20 thousandths quicker than Lewis Manley, who is fastest in sector 2. Then it's Daniel Handover in the number 43 Subaru that completes the top 2. Fastest in sector 3, a 15.152 second sector. But the gap again, it peaks and troughs as you can see on the timing screens, but Callum Cripps will be looking to try and make some headway, but with 60 kilos of ballast on that Subaru, that's not really helping him because he's behind Chris Wilson and ahead of Ben Willis in 9th place at the moment.
Yeah, ballast is his driver's worst enemy. Obviously, it's it's going to be adding to the tyre wear and obviously making the car that bit slower, which obviously is what it's designed to do to keep the racing interesting. But yeah, it's going to be making him work that bit harder and make the tyres work that bit harder as well.
So a lot of them come over the crest as, oh, look at how quickly Matt Richards has got onto the back bumper of Daniel Handover. Richards runs wide coming out of Roberts, but still keeps the foot planted to the floor. Handover nearly had a moment going through the first part of Roberts by hitting the sausage curbs. But still, nevertheless, as Callum Cripps now comes under fire from Ben Willis, who's trying to late brake going into the inside of Redgate, but there was no room there.
Absolutely not. Did just enough to defend that position into the corner. Didn't go too tight to compromise his run down Craner, but just did enough to defend the position. Good driving.
So at the moment, top 10 is Manley from Handover, Richards, Bennett, Brown, Sibbald, Kelly, Wilson, Cripps and Willis. And just sort of looking at it, between the top 10, they're covered by just over 8.5 seconds. As Sibbald getting pushed, getting compromised a little bit, going through, I think that was McLean's a little bit. The 001 Positively Racing Astra getting handed now by the number 14 of Christian Kelly in the Ford Focus. And that's allowing the likes of Chris Wilson, Callum Cripps and Ben Willis to try and start closing that gap. But the biggest thing here, even though we're on the medium tyres here, Steve, the degradation is still going to play a factor, especially if you're in the slipstream.
Yeah, definitely, and they're pushing hard. Nobody's taking it easy. Nobody's allowing anybody to settle into a steady pace because they're either all attacking or they're defending. There's nobody out on their own apart from Mr. Manley. But Manley's the gap's down to just under a second now. So it's one to watch. Keep an eye. People are trying to keep each other honest.
Well, I think the person that's trying to keep him honest is. So the biggest thing is that Lewis Manley, you can see how hard he's pushing. Those tyres are getting no sympathy whatsoever from the number 2 in the Honda Civic. But I've just been looking at the sectors. Handover is quickest in sectors 1 and 3. Richards quickest in the mid part of the track. But Manley, out of everybody, has set the fastest lap of the race, so 1 minute 8.135. But on the last lap around, he was over a 10th slower than Daniel Handover. So maybe by pushing that hard that quickly in the Honda Civic has started to cause a bit of adverse degradation that Manley will not want. And look at the gap it's closing quite substantially. I mean, it's under 0.6 of a second now.
Yeah, and it's very early to be wearing those tyres out. There's a long way to go yet, and there's a couple of drivers going to find themselves in difficulty if that's the case, because the field is not really spread out, as you can see from the relative times. They're all pretty close, and if someone's tyres fall off a cliff, they're going to get swamped very quickly.
So between the top 3, they're covered by just over 1.2 seconds. Oh, that rear-wheel drive Subaru, bit of a handful for Daniel Handover, but he keeps it in check at the minute going through the Crater curves. And on the braking approach to Old Hairpin, they now go up the hill through Schwantz Curve into the right at McLean's. Manley still hanging on, as that's nearly 2 wheels up in the air once again from Daniel Handover. He is absolutely pushing it like crazy. But the biggest conundrum here, Steve, Matt Richards is on 48 kilos of ballast. He's just put in his fastest lap of the race, so 1 minute 8.386. So he's managing that very, very nicely indeed, as Handover gets a bit closer to Manley through Roberts, as we now come across the line to go on to lap number 7 of the race.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep an eye on Manley as we're seeing him going through a few corners, because if he starts pushing wide and losing his line a bit, that's obviously an indication that those tyres are going off, as Handover's really putting him under pressure.
Stibble's going door to door, rubbing paint with Christian Kelly through Redgate. The Astra runs wide as a result of that, but he got alongside. Now that's bringing Chris Wilson into this. And when you have a differential between one car that's running in P3, now here is the battle for the lead. Let's not forget, Manley and Handover have no ballast, and the lights are ablaze on the front of that Subaru Levorg, all in a nice shade of very, very nice Subaru blue there for Handover as they go through into Coppice. And that Subaru looks a bit more planted on these medium compound tyres here, Steve, because Manley, considering the fact he has been pushing, he is actually the second quickest out of... Oh, Callum Cripps now trying to go side by side with Chris Wilson. Now this is going to fast become a four-way fight for 7th place. Now this is between Ed Sibbald. Chris Wilson tries to cut across the front of Callum Cripps and hits the front of the Subaru, goes 2 wheels through Roberts. Oh, there's contact between the two. Cripps in the barrier, Wilson in the barrier. Willis profits as a direct result of that clash.
Yeah, that was never ever going to work, was it? It's it was 4-2, but it just wasn't going to go. No way they were all going to get through that.
So as a result of that, Callum Cripps now drops to 12th. Let's have a look at the replay here. So you can see that the back end of the Focus squirmed under brakes. Cripps goes towards the outside of the first part of Roberts. They clash. So Cripps goes in. He's got the inside run. Wilson turns in, tags the right rear, and that spins Cripps into the barriers. And Wilson is also... Yeah, that's very true about what he just did there for those that just saw the roof of that. Oh, Handover. Handover spun around. What's happened there? Now, did he have a moment? Because that was not what I expected. That means that Matt Richards now goes up into 2nd place. So Handover drops from 2nd to 8th position at the drop of a hat. And that was through the old hairpin, wasn't it?
No, that was looking more like up at the top of the
McLean's, probably.
Coppice,
yeah,
was it?
Yeah, Coppice, between Coppice and McLean's.
Yeah,
he had a massive moment there. So that's allowed Lewis Manley to have a bigger advantage than probably. So let's have a look at the replay here. Okay, so they come through McLean's. Yeah, he's just gone 2 wheels on. Yeah, I'm sorry, Daniel Handover. You're no Travis Pastrana, I'm afraid. There's no four-wheel drive. It's not rally crossing. And he just literally, I think that was just overcommitment from him, as Ben Brown, double winner from the SR Simply Race Clio Cup this morning. He's now up into 4th place and is trying to chase Luke Bennett in the 101 MG6 GT, the only M6 we've got on this grid here today. So Luke Bennett showed very, very good pace at Brands Hatch for the season opener a few weeks ago, and now he's running in the top 3.
Yeah, drivers just showing us what commitment is. We see a few of them struggling, running wide there, and that mistake from the Subaru just went to show how hard the cars are pushing. And that was his race to throw away, because I do believe he had Manley fair and square under pressure, and it was only a matter of time. But we will never know now, as we see if Richards can close the gap and do anything about Manley's lead.
Well, in the meantime, Daniel Handover has got past Ben Willis in the 85 Honda Civic. So Handover now starting to try and recover. We've now on to lap number 10 out of 23. Here's Ed Stibbald in the Positively Racing Vauxhall Astra, going through Hollywood, now down into the Craners. He's currently running in P6, and I'm just looking at the times now from now who are we on board with at the moment, just trying to keep an eye on. Now that is Matt Richards, and the gap between him and Lewis Manley is closing. They've now gone through McLean's, up the slight incline through into Coppice. And these are equal machines, but Matt Richards has 48 kilos of ballast. And looking at the lap times between the two, Matt Richards is nearly 0.3 of a second quicker than Lewis Manley. Those tyres for Manley have definitely gone off the cliff a bit earlier than he anticipated, maybe.
Yeah, I think from the lights, from the get-go, he's really pushed hard to, as I was saying, to try and create that gap, and he hasn't been able to do it, and he's maybe just pushed those tyres too hard, and he's having now to just try and, drive steady away and nurse it home to the finish. But I think he's going to come under a lot of pressure very, very soon.
Yeah, just keeping an eye on the sector times being set by Daniel Handover. He's actually been the fastest driver out of anybody, quickest through sectors 1 and 3. Richard's still the fastest in sector 2. But I'm just keeping an eye on who's been fastest out of everybody through the top 9 drivers. Reference sector 1. It's even Steven between Christian Kelly and Ed Sibbald. the previous time around. But again, it looks like, I'm just seeing here, Manley now is starting to try and get away from Matt Richards. He's quicker by nearly 2 tenths in Sector 1, but then Richards starts to claw a little bit back, about a tenth in Sector 2, as they now fast approach the completion of lap number 11 before we pretty much hit halfway here at the race.
Just watching some of the lines as we were following the guys there, and it has to be said, Manley is struggling to hold a tighter line, and Richards just seems a bit more planted and a bit smoother. So I think his car is under more control and has more traction at this point. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he's setting the faster times, and as we see, that gap is just almost coming down to less than a second at times. He's really closing up now.
So we go on board with our race leader, Lewis Manley. So through the old hairpin, past Starkey's Bridge on the left-hand side, up towards Schwantz Curve, and then into the right at McLean's. Stay on board with him for just a moment. Deep into the braking zone. Tries to get as much apex as he can. Runs a little bit wide, coming into the corner. 2 wheels on the grass. The other 2 on the curb, up towards the double right at Coppice. Manley just wrestling with that Honda Civic. And one of the biggest things that we do also need to talk about here, Steve, is torque steer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big problem. When you've got the likes of the BMWs and the Subarus, they don't have torque steer, but they might have rear end snap away at some particular point if they put the power too hard through the corner.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's down to personal choice as well. I mean, as a driver myself, I prefer the rear wheel drive because I can deal with oversteer a lot easier than you can deal with torque steer, understeer sort of scenario. And I do think the Civic's probably on the front end there has been a lot harder on the tyres. It's difficult to deal with his torque steer because obviously it just compromises everything, and when it starts inducing the understeer as well when you're lifting off, and it just really unsettles and unbalances the car.
So Daniel Handover has got past Ed Sibbald. So Handover now up into 6th, having dropped initially from 2nd to 8th place. And I've just been keeping an eye on his lap times. He's actually running quicker than anybody. 1 minute 8.582. I think he's trying to make amends for his faux pas a few laps ago, as he was nearly a second quicker than, he was over 9 tenths quicker than Sibbald on that last lap. But this is getting rather interesting, Steve. We've got past halfway distance on the first of 3 23-lap races, and Daniel Handover looks to be charging a bit further forward towards the front like we saw initially, where he was putting Manley under pressure, but now that person that's doing that is Matt Richards. Look at the gap, it's under half a second.
Yeah, it seems that, like I said, like we keep saying, Manley's struggling and he's not got the pace he had in practice. So qualifying, he's just putting the laps in and he's trying to nurse that car home. Richards is down to half a second now. Interesting to see, just as we were watching Handover, then he's putting the laps in. He's on a recovery drive, as it were. But Richards is definitely on the attack, and Manley's going to have to defend very, very soon. I mean, Richards has taken half a second out of him in the last couple of laps, and he's definitely going to be getting an effective slipstream now.
Yeah, he took just over 2 tenths last time around. It was 232 seconds that he took out of Manley on lap number 13, as we're on lap number 14 of this race, soon to be lap 15. The gap now closing rapidly between the 2 leaders. It's under 3 tenths between Manley and Richards in the battle for the lead. Meanwhile, Ben Brown has been closing up steadily on the back bumper of Luke Bennett. Here are the 2 leaders going through into Redgate, lap 15 out of 23. Manley takes a tighter line through the apex of Redgate, through into Hollywood, now down towards the Craners. It is about who wants it the most, who is going to have the biggest commitment, and especially when the driver in second has 48 kilos of ballast on board that Honda Civic.
Yeah, he's really pushing, and it's very impressive to think that he's got all that ballast on there. But he's looking to go up the inside there, which is going to put him on the outside as they go through Schwantz, and he's going to be on the outside now as they go into McLean. So I'm not quite sure he's going to get it done, but he's going to be in a good position for the slipstream down Starkey's.
Yeah, they now head up to Coppice. Again, Richards heads towards the outside. Manley takes a tighter line through both corners, as in comparison with the number 1, the reigning and defending champion. Now down Starkey straight, over the crest they go, heading towards Roberts. Manley will have the inside line for the chicane. Breaks nicely there, puts the defensive shut the door play on Matt Richards and manages to keep a hold of the lead as we now head on to lap number 16 out of 23. Track temperature now up a single degree Celsius, up to 14 air and 14 out on track. But Lewis Manley, despite having really taken the life out of those tyres in the early stages of the race, these two were battling hammer and tongs last year, Steve, for the overall title. And Manley now knows that his championship fight really starts now. And if he can get onto the best foot possible after race one, that's going to really help him for these next two races a bit later on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great confidence booster, obviously, if you're winning the races. But I mean, I think Richards, to be fair, he's got a few laps left. He doesn't want to try and be too hasty, because obviously that move he tried to make into Roberts there has just cost him a bit of time. It'd have possibly been better just thinking, that this move's not going to work and backing out of it a little bit sooner. So he didn't compromise his line through the chicane, but it'll close back up again, and he just needs to, like I say, think about it, take his time, carry the momentum and get the job done.
Well, another battle that's really waging on is between Luke Bennett and Ben Brown, just behind the top two. You can see them in the distance on the main part of the screen and also on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen at home as Ben Brown goes towards the outside of Luke Bennett, heading through into Redgate. Let's see who takes the tighter apex this time. Well, they both pretty much take the same racing line, going through Hollywood. Now down into the Craner curves. Ben Brown very, very quick last time out at Brands Hatch Indy. And at the moment, he's currently 8th in the standings. But yeah, a little bit of a run wide there by Luke Bennett going through the old hairpin. Brown quickly on the back bumper through Starkeys. Now into Schwantz curve. Again, Bennett keeps ahead for the minute.
Yeah, Brown doing a good job there of attacking again. He's showed in the Clios that he's a quality driver, and he's doing it all over again. He's having a good battle, and he's not taking no prisoners. And he's going to be tucked up right. He's not in the slipstream. He's alongside almost there as they come through Coppice.
Yeah, Ben Brown won the Simply Race Clio Cup last year, so good to have him in the top tier of the Simply Race British Championships. So Luke Bennett won it last year. Ben Brown is leading the standings in the Clio Cup after 2 rounds from earlier on this morning. So Luke Bennett showing that even though he's selected one of the cars that isn't unfortunately on the BTCC grid these days, he still shows that here in the Simply Race British Championships, it's still a pretty decent car to have.
Well, he's putting it to good use, and he's nothing to be ashamed of. His performance that he's putting in today is very, very respectable indeed. So we are on board with Ben Brown in the Honda Civic, the number 22. Same race number as he's got in the Simply Race Clio Cup. After his well-deserved racecraft this morning and showing what he's capable of in the tin top, he's also done some pretty good work so far this season. As look at the gap between Richards and Manley, it has closed down once again. We're about to complete lap number 18 out of 23 as the leaders go through Roberts. Line astern between the two Honda Civics. Matt Richards in the tow of Lewis Manley. Here we go, round past. We're now on to lap number 19. Richards to the outside of Redgate. Both a little bit of rubbings racing there. Richards runs wide coming through in towards Hollywood. That allows Manley a little bit more breathing space, about a 5 to 8 car lead that the number 2 Honda Civic has as they go down through the Craners into the old hairpin. Tight apex is taken by the pair of them, but Lewis Manley still holding on for the lead of this race as we fast approach the conclusion of it through into McLean's. Line astern between the pair. Steve, this is what you want in touring car racing, because it's not just a battle for first and second we need to concentrate on. Look at the battle for third and fourth between Bennett and Brown. That's still going on like nobody's business. Yeah, the gaps between Manley and Richards and Bennett and Brown are almost identical. Awesome racing, and this is touring car racing. This is what it's all about. But I just hope Richards, he just wants to, he's got a couple of laps. Just sit there and just put some pressure on Manley. Just see if he makes a mistake. See if he leaves the door open somewhere. He's tried to make a couple of moves, and both times he's compromised himself and lost ground. So he just needs to think about it and just work at it a little bit rather than trying to shove it up as fast as he can, sort of thing. It's just steady away.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that this is going to change in some respects in the early throws of round 2 here at Donington Park National. The current championship leader coming into this round, Callum Cripps, is down in 10th place, so effectively that will promote Matt Richards and Luke Bennett, by my estimation, to the top of the standings respectively after what's been such a great couple of battles at the front of the field. So Callum Cripps not having the best run of luck in race 1. Let's hopefully that changes for him in race number 2. Ben Willis has had a really, really good performance so far. He's up from 11th to 7th place, and he's ahead of Daniel Handover. So Handover must have had a bit more of a moment a bit later on in the race, as Christian Kelly up from 7th to 5th as the leaders now make their way through into Roberts once again. We're going to go on to lap number 21 out of 23. Line astern of the 2 Honda Civics yet again. Across the start-finish line they come. And it is just over 2.5 tenths of a second between the pair, as Ben Willis now being hassled once again by Daniel Handover. Oh, battle for the lead, side by side between the two, going through Redgate. Now into Hollywood, a little bit more pushing from Matt Richards this time. Lewis Manley trying to do the thou shalt not pass defensive manoeuvre on Matt Richards. Back into the old hairpin goes the number 2, still in the lead. This and 2 more laps remaining. What a crescendo. And a grandstand finale we've got in prospect here as through Schrunt's curve they come. Richards on the inside, now to the outside of McLean's. Manley still up in front. Honda versus Honda, and this is where it gets really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic driving from Manley there to maintain the lead down the corner curves. I didn't think he was going to do that. I thought Richards almost had the job done as he prized the door open, but yeah, fantastic driving from both drivers as we see Richards going to the outside again. It's not going to work this time, I don't think. No, he's going to have to tuck back in behind and hopefully stay tucked up behind and have another go down corner curves maybe, because that was his strongest opportunity yet.
Well, we're now on to lap number 22 out of 23, so this plus 1 additional lap to go. And I think in some respects, Matt Richards did not get the run coming out of the final part of Roberts like he thought he would, as he has done over the last 3 or so laps. So now the gap between Manley and Richards extends to just over 6 tenths as they drop their way down the roller coaster that is the Craner Curves. Braking heavily, going into the old hairpin. Manley makes it nice and clean, as does Richards. Luke Bennett is now pulled away from Ben Brown in the battle for 3rd position. So the gap between them just over a second. Christian Kelly, Edward Sibbald, Ben Willis, Daniel Handover, Ben Bennyworth now up from 12th to 9th as Callum Cripps still languishes in the final position of the top 10.
Yeah, Richards is closing up again. That gap's coming down a tenth at a time, and he's going to gain some time now in the slipstream down Starkey Straight, but he's not going to get many more chances now. They're going to come onto the last lap, and he needs to be tucked in as close as he can. And as I said on the previous lap, Craner Curves is going to be the place to go, and he's certainly putting everything into the attack there. Nothing held back as he rode over those sausage curbs. He's not quite close enough, but he's going to go through Redgate pretty quick. So he always takes that wider turn in, and he's going to try and get tucked right up behind Manley now as they go down Craner Curves.
Yeah, through Hollywood for the final time. Lap 23 out of 23. An enthralling battle from lights out to checkered flag here in race 1 for the touring cars. At the second round of the Simply Raced British Championships at the Donington Park National Circuit. Richards is close enough. It is the last chance for Matt Richards to try and strike. Now he can't get, if he needs to get a switchback opportunity, and he gets really up close and personal towards the outside on the exit of McLean's. Now into Coppice for the final time. Manley holds on. Bennett and Brown side by side. Little nudge from behind from Richards onto Manley. This could probably have assisted Manley and hindered Richards as a result as they come over the crest. Down Starkey Straight for the final time. Through into Roberts. Manley goes defensive, another tap from behind. That's 3 taps in a row from Richards. Coming out of the final corner, a little bit of a boot on the other foot, but Lewis Manley takes the checkered flag to win race 1 here at Donington Park National. And that was by 2 tenths of a second between the pair, if that. Luke Bennett, best Ben Brown for 3rd place, Christian Kelly in 5th. Ed Sibbald in 6th. Ben Willis hangs on to 7th ahead of Daniel Handover. Ben Bennyworth takes 9th in the BMW ahead of the Subaru of Callum Cripps. So Sean King will now very shortly cross the line to take 11th position. Chris Wilson will take 12th. Matt Willett takes 13th with Steve Burton in the 87 Mercedes soon to cross the line. But what a titanic battle between the two at the front of the field there, Steve.
Yeah, certainly did not disappoint. Some excellent driving standards from all the drivers. Little bit of aggression when required to try and force the door open a couple of times, but nothing that hindered anybody or took anybody out. So really good driving, and just awesome to see such close battles all the way down the field. Not just a couple of guys, but the majority of the field there having a battle at some point.
Okay, right. I'm going to go down and speak to some drivers, so I'll be back with you in just a moment, Steve. Let's have a chat with our top three. And first things first, Lewis Manley. Finally, a victory comes your way, but that was hard fought all the way through the race. You pushed hard from the outset, Lewis, but you managed to get the job done despite the best effort of Matt Richards.
Yeah, tell me about it. I can't tell how he was faster than me through the midfield of the race because he had weight and as I didn't. I got the start I needed, so I was able to have a bit of breathing space when Andover made his mistake. It was just such hard work being under pressure, defending and getting hit so many times, but I had to keep my cool, and thankfully I held on for the win. So of course I've got to carry the maximum weight for race 2, so it's going to be more difficult to win this race 2, so I've got to hope for the same result.
I completely can't agree any more with you there, Lewis, but great job, fantastic drive, well done. Race 1 victor here at Donington Park National.
Thanks, cheers.
Matt Richards, now that was definitely something for the ages there. A great titanic battle between you and Lewis. It kept on ebbing and flowing. We saw multiple times that even with 48 kilos of ballast, you were still able to keep pace with Lewis throughout the majority of that race. How was your tyre deg throughout it all?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, I could just tell that my tyres were going to be better than Lewis's. So, I mean, if he wants to join the party with no weight, then he needs to see what the party's like in race 2 when he has it. For him talking about being hit, maybe he should turn in a little bit less harsh if somebody tries to make a move and stop braking on apexes. So we'll see how we go forward.
Well, Matt, all the very best of luck for race 2.
Thank you very much. It's going to be a fun one.
Indeed. Luke Bennett, 3rd place in the race in the Soul MG. Obviously a great start to your season in some respects back at Brands Hatch, but to get a 3rd place here in race 1 at Donington Park, despite the fact that Ben Brown was doing his best to get past you in the latter stages, still a very good effort. Tell us about the race from your perspective.
Yeah, really happy with that, if I'm honest. Bit of a poor start, which I'm a bit annoyed about, but got back past Ben pretty quickly. Trying to catch the top 2 after Dan spun was difficult. Their pace is just very, very good. And then as Matt caught Lewis, I was starting to catch them as they battle him, but Ben caught me, so we ended up battling, which I was a bit annoyed about. Otherwise, I think we could have been part of that leading quartet. But yeah, no, pretty happy with the P3.
And obviously that helps your championship push no end. Obviously coming into this round, you were you're 2nd in the standings. Obviously that effectively, I think with the efforts from both you and Matt, that puts you both ahead of Callum Cripps going into the 2nd race. That must be a pretty good feeling that the guy that was fastest and won the 3rd race for Brands Hatch had a lot of work to do, and with 60 kilos of ballast, that Subaru didn't look as planted as we saw last time out.
Yeah, I mean, it is great to see Callum, no offence to him, but it's great to see him down in P10. But it's I think it's between me and Matt now in the next race to see how we get on.
Well, Luke, all the very best of luck for race number 3, and great job for getting P3.
Thank you.
In the top 3, but some great defending by all 3 drivers in their own right, and that's just a sign of things to come, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the next race and just to see what difference the ballast makes and how it shakes the field up a little bit, because as we saw there was some great battles throughout the field and some very close battles with some door banging, but Rubin is racing, and as I said at the end of that race, I think there was nothing too untoward in that. It was all just good close racing.
Well, join myself and Steve Proudly in just a couple of moments' time when we get race 2 here at Donington Park National underway. Nice one, Steve. I'm going to go mute for a second, mate. Welcome back. A fantastic first race. 2 more to go. 45 miles per race so far. And Steve Bradley, that was definitely a sign of things to come, as I mentioned at the end of the first race. But, great defensive job by Lewis Manley. Even though he had 0 kilos of ballast, he now gets the full 60 for race 2. And Matt Richards will only be 6 kilos lighter by about 54. So we're going to really see a different dynamic here for race 2, aren't we?
We certainly are. If those two get together on track again, then it'll be really interesting to see what the lap times are like. But not only the lap times, let's just see how the race progresses with the moves. Because that was certainly close and tight in the first race, and it's definitely whet the appetite for more of the same, please.
So let's have a look at the grid for race number 2 out of 3 here at Donington Park National for the touring cars here for the second round of the Simply Race British Championships. Lewis Manley, once again, will start on pole position, but this time has 60 kilos of ballast. Matt Richards will line up alongside in the number 1 in the Honda Civic. Luke Bennett and Ben Brown will complete row number 2. Then it's Christian Kelly and Ed Sibbald rounding out row number 3 ahead of Ben Willis and Daniel Handover. And I think really Handover, I think you probably agree with me, Steve, that Handover could have really had a chance to maybe have gone for the victory even at some point.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. He definitely looked strong, and it was just unfortunate that he didn't get to really put the attack on and get the job done. But yeah, it's definitely race 2, second chance to prove yourself and get that performance in that you need.
So he's just ahead of Ben Bennyworth and Callum Cripps, who round out the top 10. Had a quick chat with Callum Cripps in the interval between races 1 and 2, and he said, well, Donington's not been a really good track for me today. And plus, with the ballast, it didn't really help. But we'll see if things come good for the Subaru driver in the number 21 for race 2. Sean King will round out the top 11 ahead of Chris Wilson. Matt Willett and Steve Burton complete the 7 rows of a total of 14 competitors here at Simply Race, physically speaking, but in the virtual sense, back onto Donington Park National we go. 23 more laps. Another 45 miles or 72.4 kilometres of exciting tin-top action in prospect as the front 2 now take their positions on the grid as we wait for all and sundry to line up in their grid positions ahead of the race start itself. Now, Steve, apart from Manley and Richards, I think Ben Brown and Luke Bennett could really factor into this one this time around, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't so far away from the leading 2, and they were definitely close together on the track, racing as hard as the front 2 were. So, I mean, yeah, definitely we could have a 4-way battle up front, no question, even a 5-way battle up front if that Subaru gets itself up there.
So the revs rise, and we are off and away once again for race 2. Manley again gets a good start. Richards trying to now fend off Luke Bennett as they go through into Redgate. It's nearly 3 abreast for the first time, with Ben Bennyworth, I spotted, was in the middle between Ben Willis and Callum Cripps. As now they head through Hollywood. Bennett looks to have got the run on Richards down into the Craners for the first time, so the MG now takes second place. As that's definitely brazen from Daniel Handover, who went side by side through the second part of Craners with Ed Sibbald, and who has come out on top. Well, it's going to be nip and tuck between the pair of them. I think Handover, going through Starkey's Bridge, has managed to get in front. Will he do so? Not too sure as we switch quickly back to the leader. And no, it's still side by side, and Callum Cripps has shot up the order from 10th to 8th place, and he's right in the wheel tracks of Ed Sibbald, who still is keeping his Astra side by side as Handover runs wide, coming through Coppice. Great start by the whole field. But also, Callum Cripps is a man on the mission. He's nearly making it 3 abreast over the crest, going through into Roberts for the first time of asking. But at the moment, Lewis Manley is really still keeping ahead of Luke Bennett, who's got past Matt Richards on the first lap of the race.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I could so easily have ended in tears there as they went into Roberts, but all the drivers showing great respect and great talent to fall back into line there, and nose to tail as they go down here. Handover's really looking to get a move on, because I think he's possibly got the pace to close that gap and get further forward, so he's going to be keen to make the move as soon as possible.
So at the moment, Sean King has now managed to get up past Ben Bennyworth, who's dropped from 9th to 11th on the very first lap of the race. Callum Cripps now up into 8th. As I see Matt Willett and Steve Burton battling away nearly side by side for 13th and 14th respectively. So
the top three, look at the times there as well. They're all obviously still very, very close together. No one's letting anyone get away on this race as yet. They're still nose to tail.
So Luke Bennett is actually the lightest of the top three, with Lewis Manley having the top amount of ballast, as Matt Richards still on 54 kilos. That car is well and truly sorted. He goes towards the outside, heading into Redgate, as we're now on to lap number 3 out of 23. Ben Brown, who was just outside of the top 3 positions, is on 42 kilos of ballast. Daniel Handover will have 18, and one of the biggest things here is Callum Cripps, who's chasing the sister Subaru down the Craner curves, is on the minimal amounts of ballast and on 6 kilos as we go on board with Daniel Handover on the right bottom part of your screen, as Bennett really finding some good pace in that MG. Matt Richards keeping with him, but nearly has a bit of snap-on oversteer on the back end of the Honda Civic. They go through Coppice as we fast approach the completion of lap number 4, and I'm sure that Lewis Manley is probably trying to have a bit more of a strategic play, the fact that he's got 60 kilos on that Honda Civic here, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the right position to defend. He's got the lead, but he's not going to make a break. And if we remember in the first race, Matt Richards took a few laps to find his feet, but once he got on pace, then he kept closing that gap down and really put the pressure on Manley. So I expect that to happen a bit sooner. Obviously, there's just a fly in the ointment of Luke Bennett in between them at the moment, and as you say, Luke's finding great pace from that car, and maybe he's going to put a move on Manley first. Let's watch this space.
So down through Craners once again, we go back on board with Daniel Handover, who's trying to chase down Ed Sibbald, and both the Subarus have their headlights ablaze. Luke Bennett getting really up close and personal going through Schwantz curve on Lewis Manley, who instantly goes defensive going into McLean's. Once again, some great defensive work from the number 2 in the first race. He's having to do it a heck of a lot earlier, coupled with the additional ballast he's got on that car. He had 0 kilos of ballast, and even with 48 kilos on his car, Matt Richards was still very close to Manley as they now head down. So look at the bottom right. That is an onboard from the MG of Luke Bennett. They come out of the final corner through Roberts. Line astern pretty much between the top 3. So Richards getting a double tow from Messrs Bennett and Manley just up ahead as they all try and go synchronised into Redgate, and that was like a flock of seagulls trying to make their way through Redgate. Nice diagonal synchronicity there between the three there, wasn't there?
Yeah, interesting analogy there, Alex. Yeah, great stuff. But,
yes.
Ben Brown certainly closed up as well, as he's right on the tail now of Richards and really bringing himself into this battle, because obviously Manley's going to have to start driving defensive, and as we know all too well, that just brings the lap times down a little bit. And Christian in 5th place is not too far away either. He's closing the gap up. So yeah, these guys are sort of tripping over each other a little bit now, and they're all bringing more cars into play.
Well, that'll include the likes of Ed Sibbald, who's got Daniel Handover, and Callum Cripps. Cripps has set the fastest lap of the race to 1 minute 8.437. And he's still trying to chase down the 2 in front as they go over the crest down into Roberts. About to complete lap number 5 and go on to lap number 6. 2 wheels up in the air on the right-hand side of Ed Sibbald's Vauxhall Astra, as Matt Richards trying to get the run on Luke Bennett. He goes towards the outside. Bennett goes onto that same racing line to cover off the Honda Civic. And now Ben Brown really fancies his chances, and he was the quickest out of the quartet. Oh, now probably the slightest amount of contact between Sibbald and Handover, but Handover nudges ahead ever so slightly going through the Craners. Callum Cripps now going up the inside through the second part, past Sibbald, up into 7th position. Goes the number 21, and he's trying to still keep pace with the number 43 of Daniel Handover, who now occupies 6th.
Yeah, that was just some great driving from Handover there. He just managed to get the door open and force his way through, and just held it down Craner curves, and he's going to put the chase on now, because I believe he's going to get up to these guys up front and make this a 6-way battle, maybe even.
Might even be a 7-way battle, with the way that Callum Cripps is also not too far off the pace of Daniel Handover. They seem to be working together as again Manley goes defensive into Roberts. Two wheels on the sausage curbs on the left-hand side, but Manley still keeps ahead of the MG for the minute. Richards and Brown closing them down in the pair of Hondas. Then it's Christian Kelly in the Ford Focus. Lap number 7 out of 23, side by side between the leaders through Redgate. Manley pushes Bennett wide. That is allowing Richards to try and get through up the inside through into Hollywood. Oh, the pair tangle a little bit. A bit of door panel rubbing between the pair. But I think for the old hairpin, Richards will have the inside run, will he? Bennett keeps it planted round the outside. He's not giving Richards an opportunity to get past. And this is in some ways possibly hampering Ben Brown and Christian Kelly as they now go through into Schwantz Curve and into the right at McLean's. Bennett again towards the outside of Manley, heading into McLean's, but Manley not giving up without a fight.
Absolutely not. I mean, this is the they are tripping up over each other and they're just bringing more and more cars into play. But this is what we want to see. The battling is great. The battling, it's clean. There's a bit of door rubbing, but rubbing is racing. They're not doing anything too detrimental. They're just letting each other know that they're there and they want that position. They've all got their eye on that first place and they're going to go for it.
So top 12 covered by just over 8.2 seconds as we now head onto lap number 8 out of 23. Bennett again going towards the outside of Manley as Richards looks toward the outside of Bennett through Redgate. If that had gone 3 abreast, that would have been heart in the mouth moment there for anybody, let alone the 3 battling over the lead. But now down through Hollywood into the Craners. Manley still has the advantage over Bennett and he is pushing like crazy to keep that lead through into the old hairpin. That is incredibly close. And between the top 5, it is just under 1.5 seconds from front bumper of Manley to the rear bumper of Kelly. But Kelly has dropped off quite considerably. I think he might have just made a little bit of a mistake there. And that has put him, he lost the back end. And that has put him firmly into the clutches of Daniel Handover and Callum Cripps, who are also chasing forward.
This is very impressive. Nose to tail, bumper to bumper, just absolutely as close as they can be. Not just getting one slipstream, but like you say, they're getting double slipstreams sometimes. Pulling out 3 abreast, nowhere to go as we're entering into Roberts again. Manley going to complete another lap in the lead with Bennett, Richards behind him, all chasing hard, pushing hard, all wanting that number 1 spot.
Well, the top 9 covered by just over 3 seconds as we go on to lap number 9 of 23. Manley goes defensive once again through Redgate. Bennett looking to get that opportunity. Runs a little bit wide coming out of the corner. A little bit of a touch between the pair, but Manley slots back into the lead. Down through Craners. Manley again is absolutely wrestling with that 60 kilos of ballast plus the Honda Civic that it's attached to through the old hairpin. Manley again just keeps putting that car where he needs to. He's doing the job that he needs to here, Steve, and that's the biggest thing, because that's not only going to frustrate Bennett in some respects as he gets attacked from behind by Richards, and that allows Ben Brown, Christian Kelly, Callum Cripps now side by side with Daniel Handover going through in towards Coppice, and is Cripps going to get the inside run? He does on the 43. That's going to allow Ed Sibbald and Ben Willis to also factor into the party. A little bit of a touch between the 2 Subarus. And now Ed Sibbald looking towards the inside of Handover, going into Roberts. This time he goes late breaky, and he gets up the inside, goes side by side with Handover through Roberts. A little bit of a rear hip shake from the tail end of that Subaru, and Ben Willis makes it 3 wide coming out of that corner. It's still 3 wide going into Redgate. Sibbald has the inside line. Handover sandwiched in the middle. Oh, there's contact between the trio, and that allows the 2 behind, and one of them was Sean King, the other one was Chris Wilson. So 3 wide into Redgate. So Ben Brown now has got past Matt Richards. So Richards, I think, might have just had a little bit of a moment, and also with a little bit of compromisation through the contact between himself and Luke Bennett a bit earlier on in this race. Lap 10 out of 23. Lewis Manley still holding on. Christian Kelly now joins the fray. Callum Cripps is there too, as now Ben Brown absolutely feverishly trying to get his way past the MG of Luke Bennett. Through into Coppice they come. He's got side by side. He's got a bit more run coming out of the straight.
He's going to have the inside line as well, so I think he's going to get this job done at Roberts.
Yes, he has done, and there's a little bit of touch in between the pair. Oh, that means that Luke Bennett nearly rolled it coming out of Roberts. Ben Brown, as a result of the slight contact between the pair, ended up having to shortcut the chicane. This is nearly 3 wide. Callum Cripps to the outside of Christian Kelly. Little bit of a touch between the two, but both keep it composed as Matt Richards now up into second. Oh, Luke Bennett off the track. I think there was the slightest amount of nudge from Christian Kelly. He now rejoins, and that allows Kelly and Cripps to get past. So Luke Bennett now drops to 6th.
Absolutely frantic. It's one of those situations where 1 minute you could be in 4th place, and if the sun shines on you, you're up into 1st, or if it doesn't shine, you could be down into 10th. It's just so close, and it's so difficult to judge, but it's absolutely amazing. But yeah, Richards back up into 2nd place and chasing Manley now, who's had a bit of a breather from the guys battling behind him, and he's managed to pull out a 2nd gap. But I don't think that 2nd's going to last very long. I think these guys are on it, and they're going to close that back down again.
So Callum Cripps now going side by side with Christian Kelly into the approach into Roberts, as we're fast about to go on to lap number 12 out of 23. As Kelly sends it up the inside of Cripps, then who finds that Luke Bennett is to his left-hand side through the second part of Roberts. Wow, this is absolutely close quarter tin top action at its finest here at the second race of round 2 of the touring car parts of the Simply Race British Championships. I think in the words of Russell Crowe from Gladiator, are you not entertained? Well, you must be if you're actually watching right now. I'm seriously, this has been standout, a great race so far. And Matt Richards now is less than 4 tenths behind. He's taken a wallop of time out of Manley by over nearly 7 tenths of a second. So once again, this time it's a Honda 1-2-3. So you've got Manley in 1st, Richards in 2nd, Ben Brown in 3rd. Cripps trying to pass Kelly for 4th. And Kelly, I think, is the cork in the bottle, because Callum Cripps is has been the fastest lap setter in this race here.
Yeah, the one thing we haven't touched on this race that we did in the first race is the tyre wear, and obviously Manley didn't seem to manage his tyres exceptionally well in the first race. He was struggling for a long time.
Oh, there's a touch between the 2 leaders. Sorry to cut across you there, Steve.
It's all right, it's just a bit more rubbing.
That was a lot of rubbing there, because Richards tried to go through on the inside of Manley. Ben Brown now towards the outside of Richards. Richards tries to go towards the inside of Redgate. Manley shuts the door once again as Cripps, Bennett and Kelly embroiled in this battle that's now seeing Chris Wilson join the back end. Luke Bennett runs wide coming out of Hollywood. That drops him in. Oh, little touch between the Focus and the MG as they head into the first part of the Craner Curves. Luke Bennett is a very lucky man.
Luke Bennett is a man on a mission, because obviously he's lost a few places. He won't be very happy about that, so he's going to be trying to charge back through the field, as he's showing he's not taking any prisoners. He just wants to get back up there, and he was battling for the lead a couple of laps ago, and now he's down in 6th place. That was a synchronised slide.
That was a touch on the back bumper of Christian Kelly that saw Callum Cripps lose the back end of the Subaru and allowed Luke Bennett to get back past. And just behind them, they've got Chris Wilson, Ben Willis, Daniel Handover, and looking to get back up into the top 7 or 8 positions is Ed Sibbald, who started in 6th place as Bennett gets ahead of Cripps going into Roberts. He's just ahead of the number 68 of Chris Wilson.
Watching this battle right now, Alex, if you'd just joined us, you'd actually be forgiven for thinking we're on the first lap. This is absolute gem of race. This is absolutely fantastic.
And there's contact between Richards and Manley as Richards tried to go up the inside of Manley, going through into Redgate, through into Hollywood. The pair literally side by side going down into the Craner Curves. Manley has the inside run. Now into the old hairpin. The pair go side by side again. They bash door panels. Richards trying to force the issue here. Manley not giving up without a fight yet again. Through into Starkeys, now into Schwantz Curve.
He's got him this time. Surely he's got him. He hasn't.
He hasn't. Look, Manley just powered around the outside of Richards. Ben Brown now making it a triple-decker in terms of Honda power at the front of the field. Christian Kelly, meanwhile, has bolted away from those that were battling with him for 4th place. He's now got a bit of daylight between himself and the other Ford Focus of Chris Wilson.
That was the clearest opportunity Richards has had so far in the 2 races. I mean, that I would have put money on him completing that move. He had the inside lines. He touches Manley there going through Roberts, and he's under pressure now from Brown.
Yeah, so Ben Brown started 4th. He's the lightest out of the 3 Hondas out in front. And Christian Kelly started in 5th place, and as a result of that would have had 36 kilos. So he is actually the lightest, the quartet out in front. But Manley still leads after what has now been 14 laps completed. We're now on lap number 15. as once again we head down to the old hairpin. And I think now that Lewis Manley has got that measure of that car with the full ballast on board, that's a really impressive performance. Let's have a look at this replay here. Now, this is between Cripps and Luke Bennett. So Bennett goes, Knight Rider style through Roberts, and he rolls it. He's rolled the MG coming out of the final chicane. So Luke Bennett all the way down in what is effectively now entered the pits. So Luke Bennett, that is disaster for the... Yeah, I've just been told that happens every year. Someone goes through Roberts a bit too overcommitted and rolls it. But now you can see the action that you don't want to happen if you hit the sausage curves coming out of the exit at Roberts, as Luke Bennett quite clearly found out there, Steve.
He did indeed, and just back to the front with Manley and Richards, as Richards is putting the move, or trying to go around the outside, but Manley defending very well on the inside, and Brown's just trying to follow through, and he was almost cheeky enough to try and follow Manley there and take that second place from Richards. But Manley under pressure all the way down Craner curves into the old hairpin. Richards just keeping his footing, and Brown keeping him honest, right on his bumper.
Oh, Brown's got past him. Brown nearly got past him there, going through into Starkey's there, Steve. So Ben Brown really is showing what he's capable of in the same machinery as the two up front, and he nearly has a tank slapper coming through McLean's. He's very lucky to get away with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're all on it, and they're all just trying to take advantage wherever they can. They're all getting the slipstream, and if they can make it too wide, they are doing. They're showing they're not afraid to try and put the moves on. As Manley's weaving now, trying to defend, and Richards will be just trying to get the momentum out of here and maybe get on the brakes into Redgate.
Yeah, well, it looks to be the case that he's getting towards the outside once again, as it's just under a tenth as they cross the line to complete lap number 16. This and 6 more to go here in race 2, but Ben Brown, I think here, Steve, is the dark horse. Now, going through Redgate, there was a door open yet again for Matt Richards as they go through Hollywoods. Now into the Craners. Christian Kelly's just watching everything unfold. He's the one that's really got the real ringside seat, because if Ben Brown was any closer to Matt Richards and there was contact between the pair, that could have been a bit of joy for the number 14 Ford Focus.
Oh yeah, 4th place, could find himself in 2nd very quickly with racing like this. But yeah, Bennett just really not showing any mercy. Just the slightest of taps, just reminding each other that they're there, and trying to push the door open and force them to make mistakes.
Oh, Richards made a mistake there, and that was going through Coppice, so that allowed Ben Brown, and now Christian Kelly trying to get past the number 1 Honda Civic. Down Starkey straight, over the crest, now into Roberts. Kelly's got the inside line on Richards, and will send it up the inside, makes sure he gets the opportunities. Ben Brown is now the one chasing Lewis Manley, and I completely agree with Derek Rudenberg on YouTube. I think Ben is sitting and waiting for his moment. Well, I think his moment could be coming up very, very shortly indeed as the leaders go through Redgate, so it's no longer Manley versus Richards, it's now Manley versus Ben Brown in the number 22. The pair hustle their way through Hollywood, down into the Craner curves. Manley positioning the car where he needs to keep Ben Brown at bay. Through into the old hairpin. Once again, Manley still keeping himself up front at the minute, but that was a great little try there from Ben Brown. He's going to go through nearly side by side, through into Schwantz curve, into McLean's. Manley still has the inside line. Brown runs wide. That's going to allow Christian Kelly to close up onto him towards Coppice, and Kelly up the inside of the number 22. This could allow Richards to feed his way through in the process, as it's nearly 3 abreast coming out onto Starkey Straight. Over the crest once again, Lewis Manley. This is nearly 3 abreast. Brown now down into 4th place once again. Up the inside of Richards, he goes through Roberts. Richards 2 wheels up in the air. He now drops to 4th. Behind Ben Brown, as Ed Sybil's rolled it as well. Ed Sybil rolls it, coming out of Roberts. Ben Brown towards the outside of Christian Kelly, going into Redgate.
All the time is Manley's just getting away now. He's 1.5 seconds clear of these guys now. The harder they battle, the more he's going to pull away. So they really need to sort themselves out and focus on the prize, which is 1st place, and just get the head down. I know that's easier said than done, but that's what they need to do.
Yeah, so the 2 positively racing Astras actually go into side by Roberts. Now I'm just trying to keep an eye on who actually rolled it. I'm not too sure if it was. Now, was it Ed Sibbald, I couldn't really tell because both of them have exactly the same livery, exactly the same number. But yeah, but at least that landed, there we go, it was Matt. So that would have been Matt Woolitz, who still rounds out the top 10. He's still circulating. Nice spot there, Jacob Money on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. But Lewis Manley now has a gap of 1.4 seconds over Christian Kelly, as we now go on to lap number 20 out of 23. This plus 3 more laps to go. Lewis Manley, I think, is absolutely smiling like the Cheshire Cat for the minute, because the 3 behind are scrapping like 3 children trying to get on the swing at the playground. There's Ben Brown trying to force his way past Christian Kelly, going through Hollywood. And the number 14 says, you will not be passing me quite yet, mate. But they go down into the crane. It's nearly side by side between the pair. Christian Kelly gets ahead for the minute. Through into the old hairpin. Brown up the inside. Gets in front of the number 14 Focus. Callum Cripps, in the meantime, has silently been clawing his way forward. And now he factors in. There's a bit of a touch between him. Oh, that sends Richards off the track. And Richards managed to keep going and keeps ahead of Callum Cripps after that moment. And I'm sure that was definitely a moment that Matt Richards definitely didn't want happening, as he now tangles with Christian Kelly. That's allowing Callum Cripps once again to factor into the mix. And this is the 3-way scrap. What is, well, closely, that could be a 4-way scrap if Chris Wilson and Ed's, maybe even 5-way, if you look at Ed Sibbald with his headlights ablaze. And then Daniel Handover's not too far behind either. There's a bit of trail braking there from Matt Richards, locking up the rear tyres, going into Roberts, making sure he keeps it planted and keeps ahead of Callum Cripps. But Christian Kelly in the hot seat at the moment for 3rd place, but Cripps stood around the outside of Richards, going through into Redgate. Wilson trying to go up the inside. Sibbald to the outside of the Ford Focus. Sibbald has a little bit of a moment there coming out of Redgate and tags the left-hand side of the Ford Focus of Chris Wilson. Richards now trying to go up the inside through the old hairpin on the number 14 of Kelly. He goes side by side with the Ford Focus up towards Starkeys Bridge. Cripps towards the outside of Kelly, powers round the outside through into Schwantz Curve, now up into 4th, through into McLean's. And now Callum Cripps has a real opportunity, if he can get something mustered up in the next 2 and a bit laps, to try and get past Matt Richards. But now Ed Sibbald has got past Chris Wilson for 6th place. Daniel Handover just behind in the number 43 Subaru Levorg. So it will be, as soon as Lewis Manley crosses the line, which will be in a matter of seconds, we'll be on to the 22nd and penultimate lap of the race here at Donington Park National. An enthralling race meeting so far. Manley's gap between him and Ben Brown is now just over 1.5 seconds. Not too sure, Derek Rudenberg, on who has saved their tyres the best. But I think in many respects that could be Lewis Manley, as Chris Wilson up the inside of Daniel Handover, the pair swapping positions over 7th place, going through Hollywood, down into the Craner Curves.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Brown was closing the time down on Manley, because when he got into 2nd place, he was about 2.5 seconds behind, so he's pulled the 2nd back already, so he's definitely on the charge, but I'm not quite sure he's going to have enough time left to do anything about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that on that front, Steve. Fastest sectors from anybody in the race. Christian Kelly, fastest in Sector 1. Sector 2, it's been Callum Cripps. And Sector 3, it's been Matt Richards, who rounds out the top 3 at the moment. But Richards, fast, coming under pressure from Callum Cripps, who's made his way from 10th on the grid, now up into 4th as they come across the crest for what is the penultimate time of the race. So Callum Cripps will have one more big opportunity to try and get his way past the defending and reigning champion. Onto the final lap we go. 1.1 seconds between Manley and Brown in race 2 out of 3. Sibbald closing on Christian Kelly for 5th place as Sibbald goes towards the outside of Redgate. Handover towards the outside of Wilson for 7th position, but Wilson keeps ahead in the 68 Ford Focus. Ben Brown has not now reduced the gap to just under 9/10 between himself and Manley. It looks to be just under 7.5 of a second as time is fast running out. Callum Cripps will have to start fighting, but I don't think he's going to get 3rd this time. But a good performance from the number 21 Subaru, Steve, from 10th to 4th in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing performance. But as we said earlier, the racing's that close that,
moment there for Ben Brown.
Yeah,
that he was 3/10 behind Manley, and that dropped him. That cost him nearly a second in the process. As we fast approach The final hurrah in this race, and Lewis Manley on course to make it 2 for 2 here at Donington Park National here at round 2 of the season. Lewis Manley does it again in the number 2 Honda Civic with a full amount of ballast. Ben Brown takes second, Matt Richards takes third, Callum Cripps in fourth ahead of Christian Kelly, Ed Sybil, Chris Wilson and Daniel Handover with around 6 seconds covering the top 8 positions at the end of 23 laps of racing. So Ben Bennyworth takes 9th, Matt Willett will take 10th position, Ben Willis will take 11th ahead of Steve Burton in the number 87, with Sean King having exited the race stage right after just 3 laps, and Luke Bennett rounding out the top 13. But Steve, what a drive from Lewis Manley. He did exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah, he did what he needed to do, but I wouldn't like to pick a driver out of that bunch and say they had the best performance there, because I think they all did a sterling job. The first touring car race whet our appetite. That one, my God, did not disappoint at all. Fantastic driving.
Brilliant. Right, well, I'm going to go and speak to our top 3 after what was an exciting race 2 here at Donington Park National for the touring car side of things for the Simply Race British Championships. Okay, let's have a chat with our top 3. Lewis Manley, full amount of ballast, 60 kilos on that Honda Civic, and you still came through smiling. It was a difficult race, nevertheless. You had the likes of Ben Brown, Matt Richards, Christian Kelly, and all and sundry trying to chase you down, but you managed to hang on. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I'm very happy with the result, over the moon. So, didn't expect to win with 60 kilos weight. Again, I got a perfect getaway off the start, and being under pressure again was very tense, but I kept cool enough. A lot cooler than the first race. At least I didn't have as much tap in the first one, and I was willing that Ben Brown could get past Richards, so he can defend, so I can get away a little bit. So, and he was trying to try too hard on that last lap because he was catching as he was lighter. So, and he went a little bit deeper pocket, so he was trying to take much life on his tyres. But I held on to the win, so I knew I had it in the bag as soon as he made that little mistake. So, I'm really happy.
Well done, Lewis. Great job, and all the very best of luck for race number 3.
Cheers.
So, Ben Brown, you were catching. It was so close. We saw the gap go down to as low as probably about 0.33 seconds between you and Lewis, but a mistake through Coppice cost you over a second. I mean, you must be sort of kicking yourself a little bit, but still, nevertheless, P2, after what was an exciting race here for the halfway point of round 2 here at Donington Park National.
Yeah, it wasn't the last lap mistake wasn't too bad. It was the mistake which was earlier on, about 5-6 laps before, up the undercut and just ran our road. So I think I'm more annoyed about that one, to be honest. But it was a good race, some good action.
Well done, Ben, and all the very best of luck for race 3. So, last but by no means least, once again, Matt Richards. I think out of the 5 races we've had so far in the 2020 Simply Race British Championships, from both mine and Steve Proudley's aspects, I mean, just to see you all sort of duking out, we had Christian in there, Callum was trying to chase you down in the latter stages of the race, Chris Wilson, Ed Sybold, Daniel Handover, a lot of players factored into this race, a lot more than we anticipated, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think Lewis did a solid job of just holding a slower line up front, just to back everybody up behind him. And I think at some point we must have had 5-6 cars in one single train. So it's a good plan to get everybody behind him battling, and that's what happened really. I mean, we all got involved. It was a bit of fun. So yeah, just interesting race.
Well, Matt, all the very best of luck for race 3 a little bit later on, buddy.
Thank you very much.
So, Steve, some very good, nice comments from our top 3 there. But that's just, again, it whetted the appetite. Race 3 is going to be slightly different. as I think we're going to draw the number out of the mug here at Simply Race to see who's going to be on our reverse grid poll. And actually, I'm going to draw that number out now as we're speaking. Thank you very much, Grant, our race director here. So the driver, it is number 9. So that will be Bennyworth in the 99 ends up on our reverse grid poll for race 3. So, Steve, we're going to have a really exciting race 3. I can't wait. What about yourself?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Every race today so far has entertained, and they're just getting better and better. So yeah, bring it on! I can't wait.
Yeah, I couldn't echo those sentiments any further if I tried, my friend. But thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back in just a few moments' time for our third and final race to conclude the second round, the 2020 Simply Race British Championships. Back in a moment. Well, it's time for the third and final race here at Simply Race for the conclusion of the second round of the 2020 Simply Race British Championships. Steve Proudley, we now have our race 3 about to get underway, a final 23 laps. Bennyworth is going to be on the reverse grid pole position, having me picking out the number 9 on the grid. Looking to be an interesting one, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if the previous races are anything to go by, then it's not over until it's over, so to speak. The racing's been hard, it's been close. Predominantly from what we've seen, it's been fair. Credit to all the guys taking part. Absolutely awesome racing. And I wouldn't want to call this one, to be honest. I'm not quite sure how this one's going to finish and who's going to bring it home in first place, but I'm sure it's going to be an excellent race.
So, as they get underway with the formation lap, let's take you through the grid for one final time here before we head to round 3, the halfway point of the season on October the 18th, where we compete at Croft for both the Simply Race Clio Cup and the Simply Race Touring Car Championship. So Bennyworth will start on reverse grid pole position ahead of the number 43 of Daniel Handover. Then it's the 68, Chris Wilson, and the 001 of Ed Sibbald rounding out the first 2 rows. The number 14 of Christian Kelly and the number 21 of Callum Cripps will round out row 3 ahead of the number 1 of Matt Richards and the number 22 of Ben Brown, who completes the top 4 rows. Completing the top 10, having taken 2 wins today already, Lewis Manley will start in 9th alongside Matt Woolett. And Ben Willis, Steve Burton and Sean King complete the 13 strong. No Luke Bennett in race 3, I understand, so no MG this time around. However, this is where it really gets interesting. And Steve, I can't really pick a winner here. Can you?
No, absolutely not. As I said, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be difficult to call it. We'll see pretty quickly in the opening laps once they get away from the starting grid how it pans out. But if it's anything like that second race, would you want to try and even call it? Let's just enjoy the racing, mate.
Yes, indeed. You definitely enjoyed race 2, as you admitted to me post us going off air for a brief moment. So Bennyworth will take his position on the grid, as it looks like Daniel Handover trying to do a bit of a practice start there to try and see how quickly the Subaru launches off the line. As Steve Burton and Sean King take up their positions at the back part of the grid. 13 degrees air temperature. Wait for the revs to build, which they do now. Hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. It is go time. Off and away. Great start by Bennyworth. So it's a rear-wheel drive front row as Lewis Manley ending up with nearly all 4 wheels on the grass, going through into Redgate for the first time as he's battling with the likes of Ben Brown. Sean King, there's one of the Astras going a bit pirouette, going out of Hollywood and has spun round the other way. I think that might have been Matt Woolett, if I believe. Very much the case. So Lewis Manley trying to move up from 9th position. Bennyworth leads the way, nearly 0.6 of a second ahead of Daniel Handover. Chris Wilson rounds out the top 3. Callum Cripps already up 2 positions from 6th up into 4th place. Ahead of Christian Kelly. Matt Richards up from 7th to 6th. Ben Brown has also followed him in the other. Richards now up into 5th past Christian Kelly. So Richards looking to make good his intentions, because at the moment, as the way things stand, the fight between the 2 championship protagonists will mainly be between Callum Cripps, who is ahead of Richards by just a single solitary position at the moment. Christian Kelly now all the way down in 9th place. Ed Stivel now down in 10th position. Sean King has gotten up from 13th to 11th as we complete our first of 23 laps here. On to lap 2. Bennyworth leads. Chris Wilson trying to go towards the outside of Daniel Handover through into Redgate, and has Callum Cripps nigh on pressing on the rear bumper of the Ford Focus as they go through Hollywood down into the Craner curves. Again, some great starts here, Steve, especially by Bennyworth, and he's got a 1.3 second gap nigh on ahead of Daniel Handover, who completes the top 2 for the moment.
Yeah, I wouldn't have called that, to be honest, Bennyworth. I mean, taking nothing away from the guy, but he's made a fantastic start, and like you say, he's well over a second gap at the moment, but the rest of the field is pretty tight and pretty closed up, and all in some close battling.
So at the moment, as Sean King looking to try and muscle into the battle between Christian Kelly and Ed Sibbald for 9th place, it's a 3-way scrap. Kelly ahead of Sibbald for the moment. Sean King rounding out the top 11 positions. Fastest lap of the race so far. Ben Bennyworth at 1 minute 15.516 as the battle for third, fourth and fifth wages on. Not too far behind the driver in second position, which continues to be Daniel Handover, as it's nearly side by side. As looks like Lewis Manley's also made some inroads in the process. He's up from 9th to 7th place and looks to be charging forward. He's ahead of Ben Willis and he's closing in on Ben Brown. So looks to be that Sean King. Yeah.
Just say it's looking like Richards is really putting the pressure on Cripps as well. He's literally a tenth off him, and trying to put a move on him as we go into the old hairpin with those. And then we've also got Daniel side by side there. Sorry, I just can't quite read the names. But
it's Chris Wilson now up into second, closely followed by Callum Cripps, who's now got himself up past Daniel Handover. And the gaps, as you can see, the intervals on the left-hand side of your screens at home, very, very close indeed. And the top 12 drivers covered by 7.5 seconds, all the way down to Steve Burton in the 87. Is about 8 tenths off of Sean King. Fast approaching the completion of lap number 3 here, going on to lap 4 as it's side by side between Manley and Willis going into Roberts. And looks like Manley's got the upper hand on the 85 coming through the final corner. Yep. He's now back up into 7th position. Ben Brown up into 6th. Matt Richards 5th. Daniel Handover has dropped from 2nd to 4th as now Callum Cripps has got himself back past the 43 Subaru up into the last step on the rostrum. But Ben Bennyworth, whilst everyone's been scrapping over the bits left on the table, Ben Bennyworth has got a 1.7 second advantage in the 99 BMW. He's doing really well so far.
Yeah, absolutely. He just wants to keep doing what he's doing, steady away, watch the tyres, keep the pace nice and steady and watch that gap, see if he can maintain it. Very easily said, very difficult to put into practice, but I'm sure he'll give it a go. But Matt Richards is the man on the move now as he's really putting pressure on Cripps. Obviously, he's under pressure from Handover also, and Handover under pressure from Brown, so there's nothing, you can't really get a stick in between these two guys. It's almost like race 2, reset, repeat. Just go for it, guys. Absolutely awesome.
So as Manley still battling away, he's got the full amount of ballast, let's not forget, and he's battling away with Ben Willis. They're still scrapping over 7th position at the moment. Manley still ahead of the 85 Honda. As Ben Brown now pressurising Daniel Handover as Matt Richards goes towards the outside of Callum Cripps, heading towards Redgate. This is the battle for P3. And let's not forget that the two main championship protagonists in this race at the moment are the drivers in 3rd and 4th. Cripps ahead of Richards by about 2.5 tenths of a second as they go through Hollywood down into the Craner curves. And you were right about that gap because Chris Wilson looks to be pushing like crazy. Ben Bennyworth last time round, Steve, did a 1 minute 9.301. Chris Wilson a 1 minute 8.934. So that is well over 6 tenths of a second he's taken out of the BMW on that last lap.
Yeah, and it's just going to be a race of attrition. I mean, if the guys behind can sort of keep doing what they're doing now and just follow line astern, they'll catch him up. But if they start battling again, obviously then the gap may open up again. But that's what we want. We want some battling, but it'd be nice if it was all battling for the lead. So hopefully they'll catch up to the BMW and we'll have a good tussle.
So Ed Sibbald, who rounds out the top 10, not too far behind Christian Kelly by about 6 tenths, has put in a 1 minute 8.534. Fastest driver in Sector 1 is Christian Kelly. Fastest driver overall in Sector 2 is Sean King. 3rd sector, I'll just wait for the times to sort of refresh themselves as Richards tries to go up the inside of Cripps through Redgate.
He worked very hard there to try and force that door open, but Cripps just did enough to keep the line and keep the speed, and didn't allow Richards to gain any advantage. But just look in your mirrors, you've got Mr. Handover behind you, Mr. Richards. He's in close attention, and Mr. Brown's there as well. So it's another one of them scenarios that anyone from 6th place could soon find himself up in 3rd place within a couple of corners if there's any mishaps ahead of him.
Well, the good thing is that Lewis Manley now has a bit of clean air, and he is starting to push. There's now Ed Sibbald trying to go up the inside of Christian Kelly for 9th place. Looks like he's going to try and get the move done through Coppice, which I think he has just done.
Yeah, and Brown's got ahead of Handover as well, so he's up behind Richards now.
Well, this is quite very much a repeat of what we saw in race number 2, as Ben Bennyworth will now come across the line. He's led all 6 laps so far. We go on to lap number 7. out of 23. He's got a 1.8 second advantage over Chris Wilson in the Ford Focus in second, closely followed by Callum Cripps. Then it's Matt Richards. Then it's Daniel Handover, who's still being pressurised by Ben Brown in the battle for what is P5. Lewis Manley in 7th and is closing on the 2 in front as Brown has got past Handover.
As you said, though, Manley's made up a lot of time and he's tagging onto the back of this, so he's going to be putting Handover under some pressure very, very soon, I would imagine.
Yeah, he actually lapped just over 6/10 quicker than the Subaru on that last lap alone. A 1 minute 9.438 from Manley, and then Lewis, then Daniel Handover, a 1 minute 10.056 whilst he's tussling away with Ben Brown. We now go on board with Lewis Manley, and he is closing on the back of the number 43 Subaru Levorg GT of Daniel Handover, who's looking towards the inside of Ben Brown, going into Roberts this time around. Will Handover make it through up the inside? He does, goes back up into 5th position. The pair bound over the sausage curb on the inside of the right-hand side of Roberts. As now Lewis Manley looking to make it 3 abreast, coming over the start-finish line. This could be very impressive from the number 2 seed. He looks like he's going to try and keep it planted around the outside of Ben Brown through Redgate, but takes a wider line. Looks to get the cut back through this time. Ben Brown shuts the door going through Hollywood. Down into the Craner curves. Absolutely textbook touring car racing at its level best, as down at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, we're on board with Matt Richards, who's trying to chase down Callum Cripps for 3rd.
Yeah, and if you just look at the timings, we've got Chris Wilson half a second behind Bennyworth, so he's closed the gap down. I wonder if Bennyworth's had a moment to lose a second.
As Lewis Manley goes up the inside of Ben Brown. That's a great move from the number 2. Now up into 6th position as Ben Willis looks to go up the inside of Ben Brown for 7th, and that's through Coppice. Does he get the move done? It's side by side between the pair as they head onto Starkey Straight. Ben Willis ahead by a whisker. Over the crest they come. Still nip and tuck between them, but Ben Willis will have the inside line for Roberts this time around.
And just look at the gap that Manley's put on Brown after passing.
Ben Brown.
It's off.
Yeah, Ben Brown just went off and smacked the wall, span around, and that compromised him big time. Christian Kelly now closing, and look at this battle. This is for the lead of the race. It's a 4-car scrap. Bennyworth still leading with about half a second between himself and Chris Wilson. Callum Cripps rounds out the top 3 ahead of Matt Richards. They now head towards the deep braking zone for the old hairpin, as Willis and Kelly going side by side through the second part of the Craners, but Kelly gets the outside run going through the old hairpin. Nice work by the number 14 to get back up into 7th position, as Sean King looks to have had his best start of the race so far, of any race this afternoon. He's now battling away with Ed Sibbald for P9.
Yeah, some awesome driving, and they're really taking it to each other. No one's giving anybody any space, no respite whatsoever. Richards, Cripps, Wilson and Bennyworth all in very close proximity now, and Handover's not too far away.
And Emily Wilson cheering on Chris quite considerably, saying, "Go on, Chris," as now Richards going side by side with Cripps for P3, down towards Redgate. The Subaru will have the inside line for the next corner.
Did you just see how he took Roberts there to gain the advantage? The speed he took through Roberts compared to Cripps was awesome. I mean, he really closed that gap down. Just couldn't quite get the job done as they go down through Hollywood and into Craner curves now. Yeah,
he closed up at an absolute rate of knots, as now into the old hairpin. Handover not too far away from this battle now, as these two are starting to drop off a little bit. The gap between Chris Wilson and Callum Cripps is now just over a second as they go through Schwantz Curve into the right at McLean's. Handover again closes up quite considerably, nearly loses the back end going over the curves, going through into McLean's behind Richards, but manages to keep the Subaru on the tarmac for the minute. Chris Wilson still trying to close. Let's have a look at this replay here. Now this is on board. Now that was from Ben Brown. Tags the barrier, spins the car 360 degrees, points it the right way. Ben Brown gets back on the road, but now he is down in 11th position.
Yeah, the guys are risking that every lap when they're hitting that sausage curb at the pace they are. It's going to happen at some point that it flips you over or puts you in the barrier, but it's obviously worth the risk because they get away with it more often than not, as we see Richards trying to put it up the inside of Cripps. He's going to stick to the inside. Yep, Redgate into Hollywood. See if he can do it down Crater curves, and Handover's going to try and follow him through if he can keep that door open. 2x2 down Craner into the old hairpin.
Richards keeps now ahead and takes third position back from Callum Cripps as Daniel Handover now really factoring in to this fantastic three-way scrabble over third place, as once again Chris Wilson starting to close on Ben Bennyworth. Chris Wilson has been setting faster lap times than the number 99 BMW just up ahead. But look at Lewis Manley here, Steve. He's just put in a 1 minute 9.283, and the gap between him and Daniel Handover is now 1.7 seconds. Now, look at it from this strategic point of view. There's still half the race to go. Lewis Manley can just bide his time, look to make incremental increases in performance, and not destroy the tyres. And whilst these two Subarus ahead are battling away, as Handover's trying to go towards the inside run through into Redgate on Cripps. This time I think he might have the move done. Does he have it? Just about, but Cripps powers around the outside going through Hollywood. Nice work there by the 21.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Manley, he's got the clear air almost, so to speak. He's just putting his laps in, he's closing the gap down. Those guys are fighting hard. They're driving offline, they're even driving off track, and they're taking a lot of energy and a lot of life out of those tyres. So it may be that they become sitting ducks later on in this race, and then Manley's probably got a couple of more positions to make up.
Yeah, last time around, on the completion of lap number 11, Lewis Manley 1 minute 9.254. Daniel Handover, a 1 minute 9.661. Callum Cripps, a 1 minute 10.011. So Manley is close to about being 0.8 of a second quicker than the 21 in fourth position.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of these drivers are finished yet, obviously by a long way, but Richards is certainly putting the pressure on Wilson, and he's looking to get into second place. Because I think he's a man, based on his performances this afternoon, if he can get into second, he can possibly take it to that BMW, which is still that half a second in front of him.
Oh, what a send! What a send! That was a proper send from Matt Richards, and look at Callum Cripps. He's not wasting any opportunity at all as the number 21. He closes up on the back bumper of the number 68. Chris Wilson had hung on for so long to try and close the gap up to Ben Bennyworth, and now Matt Richards in the number 1 Honda Civic, the reigning and defending champion, leads the way to try and close up on the number 99 BMW 125i M Sport of Ben Bennyworth, as Handover now tries to force his way up the inside of Cripps. Through into fourth place, does he go? No, he doesn't, not quite yet, as they now go through into Coppice. Whilst Cripps is trying to see if he can get past Wilson, he's also trying to see how he can defend against Handover, because him and Handover are an equal machinery. And this time, going through into Roberts, Wilson will have the inside line, Cripps towards the outside. He powers around the outside through Roberts and keeps it pinned. That's a great move there for third place by Callum Cripps in the 21.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. But all the time, have you seen Manley? He's half a second behind Handover now. He's just been, as we said earlier, he's doing what he needs to do. He's moving up. He's just keeping the laps consistent, and he's closed right up now. So he's very much involved in this battle now. Yeah,
Chris Wilson, a 1 minute 11.5. Lewis Manley, a 1 minute 9.468. That makes him the second quickest driver out of the top 6 positions. And now we're on board with Lewis Manley. Look how close he is to the number 68 of Chris Wilson. Heading up the hill through Schwantz Curve into the right at McLean's. He's going to go for the gap. He's given Wilson a little bit of a tap there. It nearly compromised the pair of them. Wilson runs wide coming out of McLean's.
Yeah, he tried to push the door open there, but it was firmly shut in his face, and he was just lucky that he didn't take both of them out there. But yeah, Wilson's going to be powering down the straight, because he's obviously attentive to Handover. He's trying to get that fourth place.
Yeah, so let's see what happens over the next few laps. We are about to complete lap number 14 out of 23.
Just look how Richards has closed up on Bennyworth, though. Now he's a 10th behind the leader now, so he has made that charge and he's challenging now.
He was nearly 0.8 of a second. He was over 0.8 of a second quicker last time around, and now they go through Hollywood. Bennyworth now coming under fire from Matt Richards, who looks to round out the afternoon's proceedings in style with a victory. Keeping himself very much in the hunt, along with Callum Cripps, as now Bennyworth trying to keep it pinned through Starkeys. BMW stays ahead for the moment, through into Schwantz Curve. Now into the right-hander at McLean's. Bennyworth just keeping it a bit tighter, as now up the inside of Chris Wilson goes Lewis Manley for P5. the number 2 seed, the runner-up last year.
Richards has got the lead.
Oh, it was only a matter of, not a case of if, it was a case of when. And now Callum Cripps gets the drag coming out of Coppice on Bennyworth. Good spot there, Steve. And now Cripps will go up towards the inside. Will he this time? Not quite. But he'll get a good run as they'll head down to Redgate. And then Daniel Handover. The fearsome blue Subaru of the number 43. Definitely in the thick of things. They're hitting nearly 130 plus miles an hour into the braking zone, into Redgate. As up the inside of Bennyworth goes Cripps. As now Handover trying to go round the outside through Hollywood. And he wrestles with the back end of that Subaru, but still keeps the thing on 4 wheels.
I was just going to say, look at the steering inputs. He's left to right, left to right. He's fighting that car the whole way, but still trying to take it around the outside. Amazing.
So that is clear commitment. Up to nearly 125 plus miles an hour. Through into McLean's. Up the inside of Bennyworth goes Daniel Handover. So the Subaru now gets through.
Yeah, Matt Richards has checked out at the front. The gap's nearly up to a second. When I say checked out, a second's a second in this race in this afternoon. It's a big gap. So he's really putting the hammer down, and we're on lap 16 of 23. So Cripps will be all out to try and catch him and close up. Handover won't have had his last word yet. He'll be chasing them down, and let's not forget about Manley, although he is in 5th place, 1.1 seconds back behind Bennyworth, but he'll be closing.
So last lap around, Matt Richards a 1 minute 9.112. Callum Cripps a 1 minute 8.989 second lap time. Gap to nearly about a second between the pair. So Callum Cripps has this plus 5 additional laps to try and close in on Matt Richards. Now Callum Cripps did come back to win the reverse grid race last time out at the season opener at Brands Hatch Indy, as that looks to be Burton going up the inside of Ed Sibbald to take 12th position, as there was a bit of a lock up there, I think, a little bit further up the road. Didn't really see whether there was a car that might have gone off circuit, but Callum Cripps trying to chase down. I'm looking at the sector times. He was nearly a 10th quicker in Sector 1 and Sector 2 last time around. But Callum Cripps, his nemesis seems to be Sector 3, because he loses time by just over a 10th behind Matt Richards, who seems to claw a little bit back in the latter sector, and that is through the sheer commitment that we've seen from Matt Richards through Roberts. As up the inside goes Ed Sibbald on Steve Burton once again. But as they say, Steve, it's never over until it's over.
It's never over, and these guys are battling all the way down the field, which is fantastic. I mean, that move there, we were watching started in McLean's, finished in Coppice. 100% commitment, 100% trust between the drivers. Great stuff. So
we now pan over to Chris Wilson and Christian Kelly, who are covered by just under half a second between them in the battle for 6th place, as they now head up to Schwanzkirch and into McLean's. Matt Richards not out of the woods yet. He was slightly quicker by about 40 thousandths over Callum Cripps, but Cripps is bringing that lap time down, as now we head to Lewis Manley. Closing. Have you got the Jaws music on standby, Steve? Because I sense something in the water when it comes to Ben Bennyworth and Lewis Manley.
Yeah, well, I did say he wasn't far behind, didn't I, with 1.2 seconds back, and he's made short work of that time. He's got right on the back of him now of Bennyworth, so he's going to be looking to go up into 4th place, and maybe not a podium place is maybe not out of the question.
You know what you said about Daniel Handover?
Yeah.
I've just clocked his lap time. He was nearly half a second quicker than Matt Richards. He's over 0.3 quicker than Callum Cripps. And the leaders now, the top 3 covered by just under 1.5 seconds. So this is where it's going to get interesting. Who's going to pick up the final victory of the afternoon here at the Simply Race British Championships for round 2, race 3 of the touring car aspects. And you could just see look how quick Cripps got out of that corner. That was incredibly planted from the Subaru.
I'm going to say it's the Subaru. We watched the on-board earlier with him soaring away at the wheel, and if you'd be mistaken for thinking that the car was just out of control most of the time and really loose, but when you watch it on the external shots and he's getting track position and he's going where he points it looks very planted.
as Chris Wilson and Christian Kelly. Oh, that was a dive up the inside from Christian Kelly on Chris Wilson into Roberts. The two focuses come out of the corner side by side, but Christian Kelly just fractionally ahead in 6th position. Now on to lap number 20 out of 23. 19 laps completed, and it's fast getting even more interesting at the front of the field. Look at the gap between Matt Richards and Callum Cripps. It's just over 0.4 of a second. Make that 0.3. Oh, I definitely feel that this is going to be one that's really going to interest us. And look, the top three pretty much with each other right now, covered by just over half a second. Yep. Through into McLean's they go.
3 cars, half a second, 20 laps gone.
Yeah, and we'll have 3 more laps after this one's in the books here, Steve, because now they come through Coppice. Down the Starkey Straight, Daniel Handover will have the double toe. Now they go down to Roberts. Richards still trying to keep ahead for the minute. Cripps in second, Handover in third. Bennyworth now 0.9 of a second ahead of Lewis Manley, who might be reciting himself to maybe saying, well, I've had 2 wins today. Maybe 5th place isn't so bad after all, as now Handover looking towards the inside of Cripps going through Redgate. The Subaru trying to make an opportunity through that gap, but Cripps keeps the throttle planted to the floor. Stays ahead for the moment, but in the meantime he has lost out by nearly double the gap that he had coming across the start-finish line. Is Wilson now being pressurised by the recovering Ben Brown, who has got himself now up into 8th place, trying to chase down the number 68 and the number 14 Ford Focuses respectively. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see Richards still holding on to a slender, and I repeat that, slender lead. Coming through McLean's, both Subarus are more planted than the Honda Civic. Now through Coppice. This is where the run's really going to work for any one of these 3 drivers. Daniel Handover now trying to go up the inside of Callum Cripps, heading down in towards Roberts. Cripps now knows that Handover is there. He puts on the brakes easily enough. Down through Roberts they go to the top 3. I can't believe I'm going to say this once again. They are covered by just over 0.6 of a second. Handover towards the outside of Cripps going into Redgate. Lap 22, penultimate lap of the race. And if Cripps can get away from Handover, he's got a chance of catching Richards. But Richards, I think, might be checking out a little bit earlier than maybe Cripps might want. A little bit of a touch there between Ben Brown and Chris Wilson in the battle for 7th position. Through into Starkeys. Up towards Schwantz Curve. Handover might have had a bit of a moment, and that has allowed Callum Cripps to close right up close and personal to Matt Richards. Through into Coppice for the penultimate time they go.
This race can't end soon enough for Matt Richards. He's really under pressure now. I mean, you've got 3 guys that have all got a podium place here, but you don't know which step they're going to stand on because it's that close with 1 lap to go.
So through into Roberts for the penultimate time we go. Matt Richards gets a little bit sideways, hitting the sausage curbs coming out of Roberts for the penultimate time. 1 more lap to go. Chris Wilson now going defensive on Ben Brown into the same chicane. 2 wheels up into the air on the right-hand side of the Ford Focus may allow Ben Brown to try and pull alongside. Can't quite do it at the moment. But the gap between Matt Richards and Callum Cripps is slightly extending to around 0.4 of a second as Ben Brown goes towards the inside. Switches back through past Chris Wilson. Up into 7th goes the 22 Honda Civic. But Wilson quickly on the counter-attack through Hollywood. Down into the crane of curves for the final time. Handover is getting ever closer to Callum Cripps, and that's how close it is. Going into the old hairpin. Handover up the inside of Cripps. The Subaru's nearly banged door panels there. But Cripps keeps it planted for the minute. That was through McLean's there. Through into Coppice for the final time. Matt Richards is on his way to victory lane in if you want to call it from NASCAR, but this is where it's all going to count. Down into the Roberts for the final time, down past Starkey Straight, through Roberts for the last time. It's going to be a different winner. It's another Honda, and it will be the number 1 of the defending champion. Matt Richards takes the victory in race 3 here at Donington Park National. Callum Cripps and Daniel Handover round out the top 3, followed by Ben Bennyworth, Lewis Manley in 5th, as Ben Brown runs wide again, coming out of Roberts, but Christian Kelly takes 6th ahead of Chris Wilson. Ben Brown takes 8th place. Sean King will have his best results of the afternoon, taking 9th place. Ben Willis did have a moment. Thank you very much to Jacob Money on YouTube, saying that he lost control of the car in front of Ed Sibbald and Steve Burton, but Ben Willis will round out the top 12, with Steve Burton being the last of the 13 drivers that started the race, all making it to the end of the race distance. Sean King takes 8th, ahead of Matt Willett. Ed Sibbald finished in the top 10, but Steve, that was another barnstorming race. What a way to conclude the second round of the championship.
Yeah, it's my first experience commentating on the Simply Race British Championship, and I've not been disappointed. It's been an absolute pleasure. Been fantastic racing. Congratulations to all the drivers today who've taken part. We've been thoroughly entertained. It's been fantastic.
Yes, we have been entertained. That's very much is true. So, before we close out things here at Simply Race for the second round of the Simply Race British Championships, I'm now going to go and speak to our top 3. Right, for the final interviews of the second round of the Simply Race British Championships here at the virtual setting of Donington Park National, Matt Richards. Now finally the top step here in race 3. That was hard for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a thoroughly enjoyable race. Yeah, it got a bit interesting on the way through, but yeah, as soon as I got past Callum, I just knew that I had to start really throwing the car about and just pushing as hard as I could. So yeah, just really happy to come away with a win.
Yeah, I think both Callum and Daniel were closing in on you in the latter stages, and you held on by a whisker, mate. But well done, great job, and all the very best of luck for round 3 at Croft.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Cripps, seems like Lady Luck was shining on you in that race, but not enough for a victory. But still, you have to be pretty happy with getting second here in race 3.
Yeah, it's nice to have some actual luck for once, because the first 2 races were pretty shocking. So yeah, it was pretty good. Obviously, Matt was flying at the start of the race, so held off him for a bit, and then I just thought I've got to let him go and see if he can chase the leaders down. And then he literally did the guys within a few laps, so I was able to follow him through after that. And then Dan was all over me at the back, so he was by far the quickest guy in the race by far. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very stressful to around the end towards the end of the race, but yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, especially when you have to try and see if you can battle for the lead, but then you've also got the decision to make: do I go for the lead or do I defend and keep second? So I was sort of wondering from your aspect, what made you sort of have to settle for second? Because obviously Daniel was, like you say, really quick on the pace in the same machinery. It wasn't going to be easy, was it?
No, not really. And I saw Dan started to fall back at the start of the race, and I just thought he would kind of disappear, and then he came flying up to us really quickly. So I was got close to Matt and then just sat with him for most of the race, thinking his tyres would fall off, and they were at the end, but he was just really rapid in that race to get through the traffic and secure a win. So yeah, it was a very good race, nice and clean.
Well done, Callum. Congratulations on your second place finish in race 3, and all the very best of luck for Croft.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And our last interviewee of the day here for round 2, Daniel Handover. Daniel, that was a really good race from yourself. Very spirited. Obviously, we saw. I wanted to first of all talk about race 1. You were closing on Lewis for the lead, and it was a bit of a difficult one, but you powered through and you got P3 in race 3. How do you feel?
Well, I'd rather not talk about race 1 and 2, but as you brought it up, no, it's definitely one to forget. Although, to be fair, I think as a new car, it's a learning experience for me. It was definitely going to be a learning race, however it went. I was quite surprised with the pace that I had against sort of Matt, Callum, who'd already done the first round. They're a bit more experienced with Well, no, Callum's more experienced with the Subaru. Yeah, it was just try and block the first 2 races out, sort of from a mentality, try and sort of get head down and crack on with it, and it all paid off in the end.
Well, congratulations. Well done for getting the final step on the virtual rostrum here for race 3, and hopefully we'll see you back for Croft on October 18th.
Lovely, thank you.
Well, Steve, what a way to conclude round 2 of the championships. I know you've thoroughly enjoyed every single second of action that we've had over the course of the past few hours, the Simply Race Clio Cup and also the touring car side of things. I think one of the phrases that you said to me between races 2 and 3 was, that's one of the best sim races I've ever watched. I hope we have you back for future rounds, my friend.
Yeah, the door's open. I'm willing to come back. I've enjoyed it. The production is fantastic as ever from Simply Race, and it's great working with you as always, Alex. And looking forward to finishing the day off later on with you.
Yes, of course. Don't forget, SimSport Racing will be hosting their 8th round of their Season 3 GT3 starting at 7 o'clock this evening, where the drivers will be racing for an hour around Laguna Seca. But on behalf of Steve Proudley and myself, Alex Goldschmidt, thank you very much for tuning in for the 2nd round of the Simply Race British Championships. We head to Croft on October the 18th, so we hope you all join us then, and stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Bye.